It's October 3rd where I am, 2019. Welcome to Potkaars, which is Dutch for pot with candle. Oh. And an interview features that candle. Oh, let's see that. Let's try the light. There you go. Start of an interview. Because these are hopeful conversations, so we try to make them anyway. Welcome, Lisa Ling, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Where are you? This is recorded from the Netherlands. Where and it's 3:30 a.m. Where are you?
I am in California in the Bay Area.
For you, it's like evening now, no?
Oh. Yes. For me, it's 6:30 p.m.
It's better. Okay. So, Lisa, you're a whistleblower. And could you start this interview with explaining what it is that you blew whistle on and how you decided to do that?
So basically, I worked in the drone program, and the drone program is the military extension of is surveillance. And it was once surveillance, and it watched over our troops, and then they put weapons on it, on the drones. And once they put weapons on it, that's what their primary function became. Not protection, not overwatch, but literally extrajudicial killing machines.
Yeah. And I read up on you a little bit. You joined the military serving as a medic, right? That's where you came from.
Yes, I was a medic and a nurse, and definitely in the medical side of the
yeah, but I was wondering, you're also, so we're going to talk about what it is that you did in the drone program hands-on, but you're a techie. So were you like a nurse with the people, or were you a techie nurse? How does that work?
Well, basically, medicine or technology was always my hobby. Okay. And I knew when I was really young that eventually the two would merge. Everybody thought I was pretty nuts, but I thought I was thinking correctly. Yeah. And anyway, so I joined the military and thought that being a nurse, I could help people, you know. And they found out I was a geek and a techie, and they thought my skills would better serve the military. And so one day I basically wore a green Army uniform, and the next day I wore an Air Force one.
Yeah, you joined the Air Force. So, yeah, but you were like a grounded Air Force soldier because you worked on the Distributed Common Ground System, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
What is that thing? What did you do?
So basically, it's a big system that sucks up data. I mean, there's not a whole lot more that I can tell you about it, but I mean, it's the system that stores, and it's the system that is connected to, you know, the drones. It is what it says, really. Distributed Common Ground System. So it's a distributed system, and it's hard for me to talk about it. There's a lot of things that I can't talk about, and I definitely don't want to be convicted under the Espionage Act. And as we know, protections for whistleblowers are just a hodgepodge of maybe a couple of laws and some other things, but the intelligence community does not have much protection.
No. Okay. Now, what is publicly known, I mean, I've done my research preparing for this interview, is that these drones, well, they're aircraft without people in them, right? Remote controlled aircraft. Mm-hmm. They're controlled through a data link to satellites, right? That's
as I understand it. Yeah, that's what I've read about it.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that's connected, every bit of data that's connected is the same. It's been the same for years. The data is ones and zeros.
Yeah.
So.
Now, when you, you joined the military in 1991, started as a Army medic, and then you moved to the Air Force mm-hmm. on the drone program. Now, as I understand it, but maybe I have my timeline mixed up, you were working there on the Distributed Common Ground System when WikiLeaks in 2010 came out with a story which we learned through Chelsea Manning. My question to you is, how was that story received back then by you and your colleagues while you were working on the drone program?
I got to tell you, at first I was really skeptical. I mean, a lot of people were talking about it, and basically the word was, don't look at it. Don't, don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And here I had heard that there was this young man in the military who had leaked a whole bunch of documents. And at first I was like, oh my God, that could get somebody killed, or, any of all of those things. And then after I got out of the military, I started looking into who was this Bradley Manning who became Chelsea Manning. Who was this individual? And there's a common thread that I've seen: the whistleblowers who come from Google, the whistleblowers who come from, like Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden. All of them have seen bits and pieces of the drone program. And that, I mean, I get taken back by that. Project Maven was the thing that was going on at Google, and I heard a whistleblower discuss that and how repulsed, that Google was actually working on a targeting system. And everybody that looks and sees the drone program for what it is repulsed by it.
Repulsed by it, yeah. Okay. Now, and when the drone program started, to my knowledge, around, I don't know, year 2000, 2001, the first drones were used for surveillance only, like with
Right.
border control and stuff, where Trump's now building a wall, right? That.
Yeah, I don't think that they were on the border back then, but I think they came to the border a little later than that. But they were, when drones first were deployed, they were used as surveillance.
Yeah.
And they were primarily used as overwatch for our troops. So, for example,
Yeah.
if somebody, they could tell the troops, don't go left. There's somebody blowing stuff up over there. Take a right, or, stay where you are. And that's, to me, a perfectly legitimate use for such things. But once you put weapons on them and you start chasing human beings, it's just not proportional. It's wrong. And there's lots of reports that have come out where the military would be chasing one individual and kill more before they get to that one individual. I mean, we're talking about Hellfire missiles. Using a Hellfire missile where, a gun would be sufficient is not proportional.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we will go into that a little later in this talk. But what you touch upon is, once you put guns on a unmanned aircraft, you've also changed the way you change war, basically. So I read a little piece of that's. The thing is, we've reached out to you also to ask you if you want to be a chapter with your story in a book that we're writing, right? And about whistleblowers. And so I started reading up on drone warfare and what that is. And the first thing that came to mind then was, these aircraft with guns on have changed the essence of war, because now there's two things have changed. The commander is does no longer have to worry about soldiers getting killed, body bags, like with Vietnam and stuff. That helped
Right.
stop the war.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other one is a soldier doesn't have to fear personal danger. I mean, the guy you're shooting at can't shoot back. That's another
Right.
big change. So
When I first got out, a combat troop on the ground, who is also an anti-war veteran, talked to me, and he said, I really can't understand how you people, meaning drone people, handle it. He said, at least we had, don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes, and we were defending ourselves and each other, where that's not what's happening with drones.
no.
And basically he was asking me, how do you live with yourself? And to me, I think that it's unforgivable. And that's just my opinion of drone warfare. It's unforgivable.
Yeah, yeah. That's, and So that was the hard. Yeah, who am I to say it's hard? It is. I'm just researching a topic. So for me, it's all safe in the Netherlands, doing my homework and making this interview. That's
That's how
that's
it is for us. It's all, we're just safe and in an air conditioned building, and that's what makes it so wrong.
yeah. But the other what doing this research made me realize is that my opinion on whistleblowers has changed, or the assessment of what a whistleblower is has changed also. So in my reference, whistleblowers like Thomas Drake and John Kiriakou, uh, uh, those guys work for an organization like NSA or CIA and go, oh, what we're doing here, that's maybe not that might not even be constitutional. And they think about that and then eventually blow the whistle. So John Kiriakou was asked if he wanted to participate in the torture program in Guantanamo Bay. He said, well, no, I'm not going to do that. So that's a nice ethical decision that you get to make. And then you blow the whistle on CIA or NSA, or we've talked to European Union whistleblowers, United Nations whistleblowers. But with drones, you blow the whistle on yourself. I mean, you're part of a team shooting people in a foreign country without risk, and you come to the conclusion that it's you that's doing the unethical thing, right?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So, however hard it must have been for the likes of Thomas Drake, John Kiriakou, Edward Snowden, and stuff, I can't imagine what drone whistleblowers or drone operative, people working these things and coming forward, what they go through.
Well, it's not like we know. It's not like we know what's going to happen once we get to the other side of the wall. And also, many of us ended up in the drone program before any of it was public, before anyone even knew what it was. And for some of it, us, myself included, before drones were armed.
Yeah.
And so that's like it is a different dynamic. And it's, I have to live with that.
Yeah. How does that work then? Yeah.
It's not easy. I do what I can to, the most important voices are those that are not heard. The most important voices are those people that are on the ground day after day after day after day. And I tell people, what would it be like if every time you heard a plane fly over and you're in America, that plane was armed and you didn't know whether the person standing next to you would be blown up in seconds? So we're supposedly fighting a war on terror. And this was a big thing that hit home for me. We're supposed to be fighting a war on terror. And what we're doing is we're terrorizing entire continents. We're terrorizing entire cultures. Even the Kuchi nomads that have wandered the area for years and years and years are now homesteading because they too don't want to get blown up. They too don't want to die, and they're innocent. They're not part of any war. So how do we reconcile this with, with our population? How can people say that, just because we're not seeing body bags on television, so okay, it's an okay thing to do? That's why I talk about it, so that people really understand that what we're doing with our tax dollars is really not okay. We are causing terror, professing to be in a war on terror.
Yeah. Oh, well put. Well, that okay. That is. There's two signals coming out of this because I saw a recruitment clip also. Join the military, become part of this cool remote controlled aircraft and doing cool stuff in those areas, right? And then
Yeah, the technology is cool. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was in a place where I got to play with really expensive technology that if I did not work in the military, I wouldn't have got to touch or see or use or learn. Um, I'm not going to say that's not like being a kid in a candy store, but once that equipment gets connected to something that kills, mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers, then it becomes an entirely different thing. And I start to question, why are we not talking about ethics with technology? Why is that not part of the discourse? when we talk about STEM, why are we not talking about people learning about what parameters we should, place um, on things like facial recognition, or getting signals from people's cell phones, or any of those things? Why is ethics not in the conversation? And I really want to see that become part of the conversation. And for that, people who are non-techie people need to start to understand some of the basics of technology.
I was drafted back in the day. I'm 48 now, so a long time ago. The Netherlands still had draft, so I was a sergeant. I remember training was okay. There was proper training, and you were trained in ethics as well. So for me, one of the reasons to actually be a soldier for a while was to see how that works from the inside. So I want to. So there's no risk of any war from the Netherlands back in the day, 1991. So I thought let's do that, and I was there was a positive um, memory I have of that. So that's out the window for the people operating these things. Then, I mean,
I too joined in 91, and
oh,
I trained, and there wasn't really any major wars going on at that time. And we were trained on medical ethics because part of being in the medical profession, ethics is part of your training. I wasn't trained in the military on the technical side, though.
no, okay, all right. Now let's um, is it still warfare though with drones? I mean, typically you would go to war to another country. Now there's multiple wars in my association. We are at war in several countries, but there's no official declaration of war that they like you had earlier.
There's not.
So is it war that we're doing now in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all, which, or is it?
I mean, that's an important question. Do we follow the law of armed conflict, or do we follow international human rights law? Or do we change channels on those two things whenever it's convenient? Tap dancing around regulations that used to um,
Yeah.
put ethics, if there is such a thing, in the whole idea of warfare. But no, I don't believe, I mean, I believe it's terror.
Yeah. Well, Bush had that right after 9/11, so the war on terror started. It just
Yeah.
didn't work out the way he brought it across. Oh, there was a recent incident that I want to ask your opinion on, or whatever you want to share on. So there were drones used on a oil refinery in Saudi Arabia. Now, when I saw that, I was thinking, if I wanted to hit a oil refinery in Saudi Arabia, I wouldn't use drones. I'd just shoot missiles on that thing. So how does that? Why would drones used in that example?
I mean, it could be symbolic. Basically, we're using drones in Yemen. Um, Drones are terror. It could be,
Oh,
kind of telling us, hey, if you're using drones, the rest of the world will follow suit.
oh, thank you for
Everything
that.
we do comes home to roost. I, Other than that, I really don't. I really don't know. I mean, maybe it flies lower than missile defense,
Yeah, yeah.
so it couldn't be recognized. Or I mean, I'm sure that there's plenty of reasons to use drones,
Okay.
but there's also the optics of using drones against a country that's, you know, supporting drones.
Yeah. Okay. So I know drone war. For me, drone warfare is associated with Barack Obama. He's in my association. That's the
Yeah.
drone president because it's all started under his presidency, as far as I can tell. But which other countries are using drones, to your knowledge?
There's quite a few. I haven't looked recently, but I believe China has drones. Obviously, other countries have drones. Germany purchased drones, Canada, Australia, um, a lot of countries in the Western world, a lot of other countries participate in making parts for drones to supplement their economies. Drone warfare is a global problem, in my estimation, but it's also being used in a manipulative sense. So here, uh, in small towns or what have you, they can have small towns making drone parts, and then that boosts the economy. And then, you know, if you're part of the military industrial complex, you can tell that governor or that legislature, hey, we're going to take all these jobs away from your people if you don't do our bidding. It becomes a big twisted
It's
thing.
it's a life rope for small communities then.
It is actually.
Okay. So, my country is the Netherlands. I asked around, or it's on the internet, it's on Wikipedia, I think. We use ravens and scan eagles, which are names of
Yeah.
drones. So, what are those things?
So the Scan Eagle is a small deployable drone that you just put together while you're. The one thing about the Scan Eagle is you're a troop on the ground using it.
Okay.
So there are troops with that. Um,
And the other one is
and
Raven. That's surveillance also?
I believe that the Raven is a smaller drone,
Oh.
um, and it is a surveillance drone.
And then the other one is we purchased a bunch of, what's that? MQ-9 Reapers.
Now those are not surveillance drones.
Now tell me, what are they?
Those are weapons.
So I asked this on Twitter to Dutch Air Force Twitter handle, and they said, no, we don't do weaponized drones. We only do Ravens, Scan Eagles, and we purchased a bunch of MQ-9 Reapers.
They may have purchased it. They may have purchased it and not put weapons on it.
Oh yeah, just use the camera. Okay.
But what you've done is you purchased something that eventually you can put weapons on it.
One of the weapons that these things commonly carry is Hellfire missile, right? What does a Hellfire? Can you tell me? I know nothing about these weapon systems. So what happens when you fire a Hellfire missile?
So there's a lot of publicity about the drone program that a drone hits its target. And that's true. If you point a laser at a target and you fire a missile at it, it's going to hit that target. But that's not the issue with drones. The issue with drones is, how do you find out that that's a quote unquote target and not somebody's brother who happened, you know? But when you fire a missile, it explodes. And it's a bit overkill when you're looking for individuals.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm not one that knows, well, it blows up and it's got like 150-foot radius or any of that. That is not where my where my expertise is.
Okay.
It is enough for me to know that if one was shot in my neighborhood, it would pretty much blow up my neighborhood.
Okay. But they are used, to my knowledge, to single out individuals.
Exactly. There's been individuals that have gone. I believe there was one individual that was in the UK talking to Parliament there, asking them, why do I have a drone chasing me? He slept up like away from his house behind a tree so that this drone chasing him wouldn't injure his family. He was somehow placed on some list somewhere. And yet this man was able to get into the United Kingdom. Yeah. How does that happen?
Yeah. Now,
if you think about that for a second, it makes no sense.
No, that's the tricky bit of this interview with you, is trying to make sense of things. Why are we doing this? What's the cause and effect? So you elaborated on that already. I mean, it's an industry. We're making money.
Yeah.
So the more...
And it also allows for the optics of war. It also... That's my clock.
Oh.
I'm a techie, so I'd sit at my computer for hours if it didn't remind me what time it was. But
Okay. Oh, thank you.
but basically the optics of drone warfare, we're not sending our young people to fight and die overseas. We're only sending in the hundreds of service members, or we're only the I mean it's useful in selling war.
So we're not sending people to a. Well, we still are sending soldiers. We are still doing boots on the ground for whatever purposes, but
But
we're
we don't talk much about that.
well. I we talk more about people on the ground, I suppose, than people working drones. No,
Not here really.
no.
I mean, we do talk about we're sending so and so to teach, or to support, or but we don't talk about sending like full infantry brigades or infantry units, or that kind of warrior. We talk more about sending drones or having technology that doesn't put our service members in harm's way. But it really does put young people. It really does put young people in harm's way.
Yeah, let's talk about that then. One Predator drone takes 180 crew in total. I read that somewhere to operate that thing, all in all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was two pieces of information that's out there just in the public domain that people can read up on, and I'll link them under the interview. And one is a documentary that you're a part in, a National Bird,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is a book, like a graphics novel called
Oh yes. Vera.
Verax. Yeah, so I saw that thing, and so what you learn from the documentary is that people working on the drone program suffer a different kind of trauma than people on the ground actually holding a rifle. So can you explain what happens to people working on the drone program when they come to realize how that program works and what they're actually doing? How does it change you?
Um, well, it changed me. I walk around living with the guilt. I used to think very differently. Um, I might have to pause this for a minute. May I?
Yeah, sure. We can cut this out. Okay, so we both have dogs. Mine's asleep because it's like 4 a.m. now. Yours was awake, so there's a bit of editing. Now the question, going back into the question, how is we know there's trauma for soldiers. I mean, war veterans have a hard time sometimes coming back into society and making a living for themselves in like a normal way. How is that trauma different, or is it for people in a working in a drone program?
So first, I want to say that there's a lot of different jobs that you could be doing in the drone program. But there are some jobs, like the job in the film National Bird, the job that Heather had. Um, and those young people, they were the ones that, I was pained watching, because they were watching people from another country with limited understanding, sometimes in their most intimate moments, kissing their children, just very, very far away, yet incredibly close. Getting to know these people, watching them for extended periods of time, and that the impact that has on your psyche has got to be very difficult. And then there were people like me, more in the technical arena, who I understood what these systems could do, and how much data it could suck up, and how much of people's lives would be affected on a regular basis. And that for me was just really hard, knowing what I mean. These drones, they don't go into developed countries. They go into developing nations. And now BAE Systems is working on one that's stealth that can go into developed nations. And just even the idea of that without having people, I mean, it's just, I mean, guilt, really, you know, it's, it's knowing that there are people that are just like me on the other side of the world that, in fact, my award says award, quotes, award, 121,000 of them whose lives I impacted in a very negative way. I don't know whether these people lived or died. I don't know whether these people were young or old. I don't know whether they were teachers or farmers or any of that. Yet I know that the technology that I was a part of impacted their lives or killed them, or, and I walk around living with that. In fact, it was so difficult for me. I went to Afghanistan. I wanted to see these folks up close.
Yeah, I saw that in the documentary.
Yeah. I mean, who are these people? And what I found out is they're people just like you and me. They have families, children, sisters, brothers, toddlers. Um, I was there, and for a moment, I remember one of the times that I went to Afghanistan, and there was a helicopter going to a training place, I guess, and it shot off a missile. I was petrified. I was scared.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was one time, one day. I couldn't imagine living like that day in and day out. I just couldn't.
Well, in the Netherlands, we have this collective memory still, I suppose, for Second World War, when bombers would fly over from United Kingdom all the way to Germany, and then each night they'd go, oh, well, at least they're going that way, and then,
Mhm.
but these guys living there, whenever you hear a plane, you don't know if it's you don't even know if there's a target.
It doesn't fly by.
No.
It stays there.
Oh
It
yeah.
hovers, it lingers. So there's no moment where you can go, it's going to Germany, right? There's no moment for that.
Oh,
It's constant.
that
These
things.
people are living under constant terror.
This is terrible. So what you're telling me, that shit should be common knowledge in Congress and with the president and everybody in office. Is it discussed at all there?
Not not in any substantive way. Not in any, I mean, drones save lives. That's the only thing I've ever heard about them. Drones save lives. Basically meaning they save our service members' lives, but
I was going to make that point. They do save when you do not send soldiers into a war zone. At least they don't get shot in the war zone. But
no, they actually kill themselves. But are there any statistics being done on that?
no, that was my
We
question.
actually, there's a little bit that has been known. They do see high numbers of PTSD. They do see high numbers of people who've been in the drone program leaving the service. They're constantly looking for positions. So there's something going on, and it certainly isn't healthy. And the other thing about drones, what people fail to understand is that once you walk into that secret compartmentalized information facility, you are ostensibly in a war zone. So basically, you'd wake up in the morning and you'd go to work, and once you passed over that threshold, you were actually in a war zone. And Eye in the Sky depicted this really well in the beginning of the movie about buying that toy and forgetting about it by the end of the day. Um, you're basically in this war zone thinking about everything that's going on overseas, and then you leave that place and you go shopping or do something, and somebody in front of you in line is complaining about a TV show they missed last night. And it's just like, I mean, you just want to knock them upside the head and say, don't you know there's a war going on? And in reality, they really don't know there's a war going on. And that is one of the positive things about drones. The decision makers up top can actually send a drone and it will not impact the people in this country at all. And what that's done is made this huge divide between civilians and service members. And there's still, that that putting on a pedestal of service members and all of that, all of that talk about we take care of our service members, and they're just hollow, empty words when you walk out of that place and go into a store and hear somebody complaining about, the worst thing that happened to them all day long was they missed a TV show. That's the distance between, and we've been at war for 18 years. That's 18 years. And we're in war in countries that we don't even know we're in war in those countries. And
You don't even know how much money is spent. I mean, we don't even know that part. All we
no,
all we know is that you might have somebody in your social network, like you mentioned Heather, who's in the documentary, that's standing behind you in line and looking sad.
yeah. And there's a total disconnect. Um, just a complete disconnect.
Another, so I watched the documentary, and I recommend everybody to find that thing on the internet and watch it as well, called National Bird. And you mentioned PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, right?
Yes.
Now, what's also in the documentary is that it might be hard to find professional help, even because you're in a secret program, in a drone program. So you need to have psychiatrists that have clearance. So so you don't even get the proper help there if you end up
Nope.
sick.
Nope. And it's not like you can talk around what you did or what you saw or.
Well, that's the other thing. If you end up with whatever trauma you have for whatever reason, at least you get to talk with your social network if you need to. But if you're from the drone program, you're not even allowed to say anything to anybody,
Nope.
and there's no help. So
And
that's
I felt very distant from the people that I had known for years. People that knew me.
you
I just didn't go visit anybody. I just got a little camping trailer, moved into the woods,
you'll
and
isolate
stayed there my
yourself.
whole time when I was actually in the program,
Yeah,
because I couldn't face people that I have known for, over 20 years, knowing what I knew and knowing what I did every day.
and some of those people in those programs would, well, end up killing themselves. Suicide is a big problem.
Yeah,
You
there
just
was a couple of people that had killed themselves while I was there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's talked about between colleagues, though, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
you have a line of work where the suicide rate is massive compared to just no other office job. So how is
yeah.
that talked about then?
Well, a lot of it's talked about as how wonderful the people we lost were. One young man, um, he killed himself after he was out of the program. I knew him and I worked with him after he was out of the program. And it started out where he was doing crazy things like getting in massive vehicle wrecks, or, um, fighting, or, all kinds of things that were just big red flags. Um, and he, sit in our office and talk to us after hours, and yeah, and now he's no more, and his child is fatherless. And I absolutely believe that a big part of that is a result of his being involved in the drone program. And how it's really hard. They talk about people that go overseas reassimilating into society. Well, what happens when you go overseas is you have a long flight, and then you land, and your family is back home, and you're at war, right? You're doing what you're doing over there.
Yeah,
And then when you're done, you have a long flight and you come back, and you're no longer at war. With drone folks, we have our families that could live down the street, and we go to work and we're at war, basically. for all intents and purposes, and we go home and we're not. And that flip flopping every single day is crazy making. I mean, I don't even know how to explain that to people, what that feels like. I mean, it feels like being an alien and you just landed on Earth every time you walk out of where you just were, because people do not, they have no idea.
I can't imagine, but when I try to look at myself, I would isolate myself as well. I would just disconnect, go to work, and
Exactly.
then disconnect. Live in a trailer somewhere in the woods, and then
Mhm.
go back to work next day. I'm so.
Yeah, the high point of my day was playing Farmville. Wow. Look,
But you,
artificial plants.
okay, but you're still here. This is the cool part because you're still here. You're still smiling. So you managed that, and you made a decision to try come to terms with what you did and who you became in that drone war. And you went to Afghanistan, and you did heal to
Yeah.
some extent. Did
I really believe that that it's important, it's an important part of at least healing for me, is to understand the humanity, because the drone program takes away all of the humanity. There's no laughter, there's no, I mean, you know, there's uh it's pretty, it's either you're really really bored flying around on looking at the same pile of sand for, whatever, however long that is, or you're then, or it's really, not boring and kind of dark and somebody's getting killed, or you're just doing techie stuff. And but the whole the operational tempo, is what they call it in the military, is frenetic. It's fast paced, and then you walk out into the world and everything slows to a screaming halt. It's bizarre, but there is some humor in it. When you walk around, it's kind of like I look around and all those things that used to be critically important to me are no longer critically important to me. Like, I really don't care if I miss a TV show, or I really don't care if, you know if something's not quite right, or I'm putting linoleum down now, or was putting linoleum down today, and the seam, if it's not quite right, it's really okay. Like, if it doesn't look perfect, it's just fine, no worries. And so that is one thing that I took away, that is kind of, I mean, if there is a good thing to walk away with, that's it. Like, nothing's perfect, and that's just fine.
okay. So there was a book made, a graphic novel with I also recommend people look at called Virax, and it visualizes some of the key aspects that we're talking about in this conversation also. And one of them is there's different crews involved in drone strikes. So one is actually the people piloting that thing from like a cockpit in your office or somewhere on the other side of the world. Then there's people identifying targets using the imagery and trying to figure out if it's a target or not. That was Heather's job in the documentary. Then there's the tech crew, like 180 in total. And what that book then illustrates is, so who's accountable then? Who's actually doing it? And it's the setup of the crew is designed in a way that nobody is really 100% accountable. And then the question is asked, so if nobody's is nobody accountable, or is everybody? And that's
In my opinion, everybody.
yeah.
Everybody. I mean, part of it is silence is complicity, right? And we're not talking about this, and we're not talking about ethics. And I mean, people outside of the military, or you are right now. Um, but I mean, as long as we're not talking about this in a truthful way, what it really is, which to my mind is terror, then we're complicit.
Well, that goes for everything. I mean, the whole reason I'm doing this podcast thing now is that I mean, there's no scale wise, it's a totally different story. But
Oh, it doesn't matter. We're
no,
all complicit in everything.
yeah. So I'm in the Netherlands, and I see Ed Snowden sitting in Moscow, and he wants to take a connecting flight to get to end up in South America, but he's stuck at Moscow, and then Evo Morales' plane, a president's plane, leaves Moscow, going home, and it's landed in the European Union. It's not allowed
Yeah.
to pass through the airspace of several countries in the European Union. And I'm going watching my country do nothing. They're complicit. They're in. Why is a South American president not allowed to fly home? Because United States has grounded aircraft. That's the whole reason I started to figure out. Oh, just as complicit to all this things happen as
Yeah, I
everybody.
mean, I mean, and that's the good news. Like, if we can listen to this, if we can pay attention to this and listen to your podcast, because you put on a lot of fascinating speakers that are really informative, and if we can listen to this, and even if you go to the grocery store and talk to somebody about it while you're standing in line, then you've done something to change things.
Mm-hmm.
You put something out there that's a little bit more positive into the world. And when you see people coming out on the streets and standing up for what's right, I mean, every day here on the news, we're hearing about the whistleblower, right? And the only reason that that whistleblower is being protected is because it's politically expedient. And people are talking like this is the only time a whistleblower, is threatened, or this is the only time. And what is true is that intelligence community whistleblowers never know what protection they're going to get. And if they turn in a document to blow the whistle on, a lot of times that document sits on someone's desk because whether to put it forward is very selective, right? Um, and now we're talking about this one single solitary whistleblower who could get our president impeached, or however all of this is going to work. And all of a sudden, everybody is coming to the defense of intelligence community whistleblowing, and nothing's changing. There's still going to be intelligence community whistleblowers that go to the papers because it's the only way they're sure that what they're blowing the whistle on will get out to the public.
Well, there's a few things are changing. So, but I have to elaborate a little more. I mean, we're recording this early October 2019. This is going to be on the internet, so this clip that this interview is not going to go away. So when people watch this in a year or two from now, so what's happened is that someone blew a whistle on a conversation President Donald Trump had with the president of Ukraine, and now immediately after, even before it was known what was actually said between Trump and Ukrainian president, before that transcript was available, impeachment procedures were started already in the United States by the Speaker of the House in the United States, right? So did I get that right? That bit?
I can't. I mean, I haven't figured that out.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know that it didn't happen at the same time, or that really isn't clear.
Okay. Anyway, but the point that you made is, here's a whistleblower, and all of a sudden we're quoting whistleblower protection laws, and we need to be careful with that guy. And you go, hello, we've got like 20 whistleblowers doing these things, and no one was protected. They're all prosecuted with the Espionage Act. What's different about this guy then? Right?
Well, basically, they say that he used proper channels. But a lot of these other people that went to the media, not all of them, but a lot of them, used proper channels first and found out that didn't work. They tested the waters.
Yeah.
I mean, I've sent information to the Inspector General and had nothing done about it. It's selective. So what a whistleblower inside the intelligence community absolutely knows is that if they can get an anonymous thing, whatever that is that's bothersome to them, to the media will report it. And they might even check with the intelligence service to make sure nobody is going to get hurt by it, because that's the media's job. That's what they do. And now all of a sudden, that's thrown by the wayside. And we hear, oh, the media lies, oh, the media this, the media, we're demonizing the media. And we're venerating one whistleblower for having, the money to hire an attorney beforehand to show this whistleblower how to get through all the documentation and the paperwork. What about the reality winners of the world, who are young people working in a place seeing something that should be shared with the public. There's no denying that we had the right to know that our election system was being messed with. Regardless of where you stand on any of it, we had the right to know. And Edward Snowden, we had the right to know we were being spied on. And
Yeah.
Thomas Drake, he used all the proper channels and nothing happened. And then they actually tried to classify things after the fact and then blame him for, transmitting classified information. It's crazy making. But now that the focus is on this one whistleblower, why don't we change the things that need changing? Like give whistleblowers robust protection so that they can do the right thing.
So one of the outcomes of this one whistleblower that's currently in the making headlines is that everybody that comes after has a president now, right? So John Kiriakou was on a Jim Dore show just 2 days ago, and he made exactly the same point. So John Kiriakou is a CIA whistleblower,
Yes.
and he goes,
Yes.
well, the way we're doing it now with this Trump whistleblower, that's not how it typically works.
Not at all.
So, but maybe from now on, the next guy coming forward can go, well, we were all quoting whistleblower protection laws. So what's up here?
I know, it's insane. It's totally insane. And it's so important as more and more things get assimilated into the intelligence community, like election protections, like all of, what we call here homeland security, like what they're going to do to protect schools from all this stuff is going to be classified. And if we don't have a way, a check and balance, because the Congressional Oversight Committee, let's just say that they're completely functional. They can't function if nobody can get the information to them. And with everything becoming more and more classified, it's crucial that we have whistleblowers and a very clear path for them to be protected and be able to blow the whistle.
Yeah, so transparency of information and protection of whistleblowers. But the current laws are insufficient. We need to change those laws. That's what you're saying.
Right. And talk about it when it's not politically expedient. Right now it's the left versus the right.
So what you need to do now, apart from taking this one guy serious and taking the impeachment procedure serious, if an impeachment is actually going to happen, is look back on how we failed to do proper whistleblower protection, failed to follow through on transparency of information in the situations with Thomas Drake, John Kiriakou, and all the rest of them.
And crucially, then we need to pardon the ones that have to walk around for the rest of their life with a felony, John Kiriakou. We have to,
yeah, exactly.
take that black mark off of them. Take that, whistleblowers walk around, even me, I didn't get arrested, prosecuted, I didn't do anything illegal. I basically took what was on a freaking award and put it out into the public purview and discussed it, right? Or on, a couple of awards. And I can't tell you how many times I've been persecuted by people who are in the military or people who, that happen to know that I've done this. And I couldn't imagine what it's like to have that and then top it off with, with everything else. And I have weird coincidences happening in my world. Strange cars parked out in front of my house. Passwords that disappear when I've known passwords more than I'll know people's names. Inconveniences, I call them. And every whistleblower that I know has those things, and that needs to change. That it absolutely needs to be that a whistleblower doesn't have to be unable to gain gainful employment.
In the documentary National Bird, there's this lady, Heather, and her story is trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, and you're in there, and your story is told, and the way you try to make good with yourself, come to terms with yourself by going to Afghanistan, see there what's happening, see the impact that you have, what the people living there go through. The third character that's in that documentary is Daniel. Now we're in October 2019 recording this. We have this whistleblower with Trump situation going on. At the same time, I mean, this documentary is 2 years old. And in the documentary, Daniel is shown as being afraid of when am I going to be prosecuted then? And in the documentary, it's shown that somebody else is arrested on TV, and he goes, "Oh shoot, when is this going to happen to me?" And just a month ago or something.
Yeah, a little over a month ago, I guess it was about. Yeah, he was arrested.
Daniel's arrested.
Mm-hmm. And now he's going to have to fight like hell to stay out of jail for blowing the whistle.
Okay.
Or allegedly blowing the whistle.
So is that talked about between colleagues in working in this line of work? How do you quit?
You mean, yeah, it's not, I mean, it's really not talked about. I mean, what I understand about wanting to change things, like having, I don't know, an obsession with making things better after you get out of the drone program that makes everything in the world worse, right? And so I understand a reality winner who basically says, wow, they're messing with our election. That is the basically center stone of any democracy. Why isn't anybody talking about that? Why isn't anybody saying anything about that? Wow, they're talking about a phishing scheme. We all know that when there's a phishing scheme, what happens is you get an email that says don't click because there's a phishing scheme attacking you, right? And then the election, the commission to help manage the elections, they're the first ones that use the hashtag reality winner on Twitter, because basically they could now, after reality winner sent an anonymous mail to a newspaper, she didn't want fame, fortune. She just wanted to write something that was seriously wrong. Like, why are these people not getting notified that they're, being phished or what have you? And so she sends that anonymous piece of mail, and all of a sudden, days later, she's on her way to jail. She's a freaking whistleblower. We're sitting here talking about this one politically expedient whistleblower as if they are, an angel sent down to earth, right? How brave, how wonderful. Well, reality winner was young, brave, and wonderful for letting us know that our elections were being interfered with. And then you have Daniel, who's in a movie, National Bird, talking about the ills of the drone program. And that's near and dear to my heart because that's what I'm sitting here doing right now. And this is a young person who has their whole life ahead of them, having to sit there and spend all this time fighting to stay out of prison. And then there was Thomas Drake, who basically, blew the whistle on fraud, waste, and massive abuse. I mean, on a really grand scale, used all the proper channels and got raided. And we're still talking about this politically expedient whistleblower as if they were, God himself or herself coming down here and saving the world by blowing the whistle. And all of these other, Terry Albury, who basically said what anybody who's read anything about COINTELPRO knows, that the FBI does prejudice things against communities of color. Well, we know that. He blew the whistle on that, and now he is in prison. I mean, and we could go on and on and on about all of these whistleblowers who nobody in the mainstream media talks about.
Yeah. All right. So if we go back to the drone program and how that started, with first used as surveillance, which is a cool tool, playing with a camera on. That's useful.
Yeah.
Then we put weapons on them. in the time that Obama was president. Has it intensified, or has it changed now with Trump? Or how do you
Gotten
look?
worse.
Gotten worse? Yeah.
Yeah, it's gotten worse. Now a lot of it is turned over to clandestine agencies. It's basically put into where you don't have to notify anybody about it.
So that's another question I want to move into, because in war there's still some kind of accountability, uh, but that
In war, when you use the military.
yeah, exactly. So drones are taken out of the military, put under. How does that work then?
So, I mean, if the CIA has the authority to deploy basically killer drones, they don't have the same reporting standards. They don't have to tell us who they killed or what mission there is. Um, I mean, basically, as Andrew Cohen, who was, I think he's CBS's legal analyst, basically, he once said that the drone program's legal because the US said it was legal. Um, I mean, this killing isn't in self-defense or anything else, and it's going to be secretized. It is secretized. Yeah. We don't know when, drones are fired. We don't know when drones are sent. We don't know where they're sent. It's all secret now.
That we do know civilians die. We don't know how. But even the intended targets, there's no accountability on that. So we don't even know how much of the intended targets we hit.
Well, they don't have to legally acknowledge any covert actions that are done by the CIA. So if you don't have to acknowledge it,
this is a new
kind of accountability.
No accountability. Well, there's. Yeah, I'm the positive guy. There is still some accountability as mankind with the Geneva Convention, where we ban the use of chemical weapons, for instance, or carpet bombing or those things.
I hope that happens.
Well,
I hope that happens. I hope that the more that people start talking about this, the more that people start discussing what's really going on, the more pressure that we put on our own governments. The more things can change, just like they changed for nuclear weapons, just like they changed for just like LOAC and the Geneva Conventions and international humanitarian law would not have happened without the pressure from just everyday people.
Do you feel that those international agreements on we really shouldn't use chemical weapons, that those agreements should be extended to include drone warfare?
I don't know that those agreements could be extended to include drone warfare. What I do know is that I think that a good start would be to take the weapons off of drones. That would be, I think a good start would be, yes, to just take the weapons off of them, and at least have some sort of negotiations. We have like global standards for quote unquote war. But we haven't addressed them with the advent of new technologies.
So the morality of if there's any in war at all, but whatever we had is reduced or is gone. Why do we do that? And how can and what?
Well, we don't even declare war anymore. So do any of them apply to quote unquote war if a war is not declared? Is that the reason why we don't declare war?
Oh.
I'm still trying to figure out, and I've asked quite a bit of people. I've tried to read up on it. Why don't we declare war anymore? Why isn't it ratified by Congress? Like for us, I mean.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, if you don't declare war, you don't have to. Just like Guantanamo Bay prison. when you take it
Yeah,
out of the jurisdiction, you're not accountable, or you don't have to.
right. So is that the whole thing? Are we just trying not to be accountable for anything? And why aren't people talking about this? Like, don't you want to be an informed citizen of your country? And
Where did we screw up then that we're in this place now? As a
I wish I knew. Technology, I mean, that's one thing. And I was like that. I mean, I'm sure that other people who were in my stead would say the same thing. Perhaps maybe even Edward Snowden would say the same thing. I mean, I'm sure he did a lot of the same work I did. Um, and I'm sure that he enjoyed working with the technology that was availed to him um, until he realized what it was doing to real people.
what should we change then to grow out of this?
We need to start talking about these things. We need to have more transparency. We need to stop. I mean, we need to stop saying things like, oh, what is it they always say? It's classified or it's national security information. That can't be a good enough answer to everything. I'm sorry we can't talk to you about the drone program because it's classified. No, I want to know more because my tax dollars are going into this thing. I'm sorry we can't talk about it because of national security. How is it national security? How on earth does this thing over here relate to national security? I mean, um, I think that we need to push for more transparency.
Congress not doing that. Your government is not doing that. Your president is not doing that. You are. I mean, I'm. I
No,
like.
you're, I mean, you're right. You're right. I mean, who's pushing? And when you say pushing for transparency, I don't mean I only want the Republicans to be transparent or I only want the Democrats or the libertarians. They need to tell us what they're doing. No, I want standards of transparency across the board. I would like to see us start talking about the things that shouldn't ought to be classified. The fact that our election was getting hacked shouldn't have been classified. Somebody tell me why they think it should have been classified. We're not talking about that at all. They just say, well, sources and methods. What sources? What methods? Saying something's getting hacked is said every day, all day. It doesn't make anybody's sources or methods disclosed. But we're satisfied with that. We're satisfied with, you know, or we're satisfied, not me, but a lot of people are satisfied with this answer that, well, Edward Snowden hurt these people. How? Like, who did what Edward Snowden revealed hurt? It's been years now. Chelsea Manning. Well, okay, you mean to tell me that a helicopter mowing down journalists that should have been released in FOIA requests is somehow hurting our national security? I mean, there are laws against hiding things due to embarrassment, and we're not pushing on that. And I don't know how. I don't have any answers. Isn't that great? No answers at all. But I just think that we need to have more
Well,
conversation.
you come to the answers once once you isolate the issue. Um, so, what's the root cause of this? And one of the things I read Ed Snowden's book, and he says somewhere, well, our constitution's hacked. I mean, the separation of power doesn't work anymore. All three powers are compromised. So yeah, well
Right.
then you don't have the checks and balances, and we see that happening now. The fourth power basically is like journalists, the media.
Yeah.
Well, they don't particularly work. I mean, Trump uses that to his advantage for his agenda. Like, oh, you can't trust the media, but it's just whenever he screws up, then he can blame the media for lying again, right? So he's not accountable. So we have we have the three powers not functioning. We don't have the media functioning. Now there's a fifth estate also, and that's us, right? That's just
Yeah.
the people, we the people again.
Hmm.
So if the
It
constitution's
has
hacked,
to come back to that.
yeah,
And it has to, Edward Snowden also said something that was really just right on. It's like we have to stop, what whistleblowers do is they take these things, these issues that were once conspiratorial or conspiracy theories, and we make them tangible. we're witness to them. We prove that, hey, it happened. And I think that that's one thing that it is the job of the media to do. And it's the job of the media to take sources, and whistleblowers are sources, and convey that to the public. And back at one time, they used to call the FBI, and the FBI would say, well, don't report this because blah, blah, blah. And the journalist would take that into consideration. Well, maybe this could be bad, so we won't report this, and we will report this. I mean, to me, Edward Snowden was right, turning all of this information over to journalists. And we need to.
So would that? So yeah, I should ask.
No, go right ahead.
So someone should ask him maybe. But would that still work today? I mean,
not with. But if you look at journalism, right? How do they stay in business? We watch them. We consume them. You know, we're consumers of what they have to offer. And I think that's where the people, we need to hold them to account.
Yeah.
But what's happening with mass media and technology and all this stuff is we're all getting in our own bubbles. If I don't like what you have to say, I'll block you. And then I'll just listen to, and then we just have growing conspiracies. I just think that that we need to start appreciating level-headed journalism.
Well, yeah, I always end up that's where the Kendall comes in. So that's why I do this pot with Kendall thing. That's his technology also. I mean, I'm talking from the Netherlands. It's now 4:45. We're going to wrap up. To you on the other side of the world, talking through the internet about these things, and no big journalistic channel was involved. This is just you, Lisa Ling, whistleblower, talking to me here, trying to make sense of the world. So that's a start, maybe.
It is. I think that what you do and what other people do online is amazing, and that it reaches as many people as it reaches. I mean, that is more hopeful than what we've had
for
in
a while.
Long time.
Okay. Anything you want to add in closing, Lisa?
Nope. This was great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, and keep up the good work. Well, yeah. Thanks for participating in this thing. Have a great evening.
You too. All right. Talk
Bye-bye.
to you soon. Bye.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make.
You think I'm joking? Predator drones. You will never see it coming.
Laat staan dat ik kan ingaan over vuur.